folks, I say it all the time, we can't say we weren't warned. Up next, 17 members of the elite Navy SEAL Team 6 shot down by the Taliban over Afghanistan in a horrific attack. But there's much more to the story and many questions yet to be answered. You won't believe the story of call sign Extortion 17. We tell you all about it after the break. And welcome back. A group of brave Americans killed in the line of duty by Islamic jihadists. Many questions remain about what went down, and our government seems to be holding back some very crucial details. Sounds familiar, right? But I'm not talking about Benghazi. I'm talking about 17 fallen commandos from the elite Navy SEAL Team 6, the same team that killed Osama bin Laden in May 2011. Well, just 3 months after members of SEAL Team 6 killed bin Laden, the Taliban shot down a U.S. helicopter, call sign Extortion 17, as it flew over Afghanistan. The attack killed the Air National Guard crew, 17 members of SEAL Team 6, and perhaps most importantly in many ways for the investigation, 7 unidentified members of the Afghan military. Remember that last part, folks. My next guest says there is much more to the story that you're not hearing about. Former U.S. JAG officer and Assistant U.S. Attorney Don Brown is the author of several hit books. His latest is Call Sign Extortion 17, The Shootdown of SEAL Team 6. Don, welcome. It's great to have you.
Eric, thank you for having me. Thank you for taking time to expose this senseless tragedy.
Yeah.
This is the greatest loss of American life in the Afghan war, the greatest loss of life in U.S. SEAL Team history. And we did lose 17 Navy SEAL commandos. We lost a total of 30 Americans on board this shoot down. It did not have to happen. So I'm grateful that you are helping us remember the memory of these men by exposing this irresponsible and inexcusable cover-up.
Don, amen. And I guarantee a lot of Americans watching right now don't even know this happened. They know nothing about call sign Extortion 17 and what went down. So fill us in. Let's start with the mission. We had 30 brave Americans in the line of duty on a helicopter flying over Afghanistan. Don, what was their mission? Why were they there?
Let's set the scene, Eric. August 6, 2011, approximately 2:22 a.m. local time in Afghanistan. It is now 97 days after U.S. Navy SEALs have taken out Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. It is about 1 year and 1 month before our consulate is ransacked in Benghazi. So this mission is sandwiched between two higher profile events. 2:22 a.m. a call comes in, and 17 Navy SEALs plus 5 U.S. Navy support personnel plus 3 United States Air Force Special Forces paratroopers plus 5 members of an Army National Guard aviation unit are rushed onto this old CH-47D chopper. This is an old Chinook chopper designed for transporting troops and for equipment. They lift off into the sky for a mission that should have been about 10 minutes from wheels up to wheels down. They're in the northeastern sector of Afghanistan in Logar province, flying across the border into Wardak province. And their predetermined protocol for the chopper as it takes off. It's supposed to call in at the 6-minute mark before landing, 3-minute mark, and 1-minute mark. It makes its call at the 3-minute mark, but after that, Eric, something goes wrong. We start to lose communication with the chopper. And as the chopper goes and flies a pattern that looks like a fish hook from the sky, as it's making the turn of the fish hook, it's turning into this mountainous area and then down into this valley where we know that there are Taliban waiting to shoot it down. As it is doing that, there are other U.S. military aircraft in the sky. Now, bear in mind, we've lost communication with this chopper.
Right.
There's an AC-130 gunship circling counterclockwise. That gunship is there to watch the landing zone. It is there to actually light the landing zone with infrared light at the last minute, and it is there to protect the landing zone. It has tremendous firepower. Eric, the captain of that gunship and its crew members see Taliban moving toward the landing zone where our chopper is headed. And here's the first major cover-up. This is probably the largest cover-up in the history of the United States military.
Wow.
The first inexcusable thing that happens is the gunship sees Taliban moving toward a landing zone with what they believe are RPGs. It requests permission to take the Taliban onto the ground, and Eric, permission is denied. And permission is denied on multiple occasions. And unfortunately, as the chopper finally gets closer to the landing zone, Taliban slips into that landing zone with an RPG and fires and rocket-propelled grenade. There are 3 bursts. The third shot clips the back of this back rotor. The chopper is now 150 feet off the ground. It falls, explodes into 3 parts, and we lose every American on the board, 30 brave Americans plus 8 Afghans who are also on board. And that is the chronology of the mission in a nutshell.
Don, thank you for setting the scene. That's a perfect segue. We have to head to a commercial real quick, but you've set the scene. People at home are outraged, to say the least. Much more coming up with Don Brown, shoot down of Extortion 17. Folks, this is a must-read. Much more after the break. And welcome back. We're talking to Don Brown, author of Call Sign Extortion 17, the shoot down of SEAL Team 6. And Don, before the break, you laid out what happened and the backdrop to everything. So many questions. Number one, why was permission to engage these Taliban basically denied? And number two, who are these 7 Afghan soldiers who were on that helicopter with our servicemen? They still haven't been identified.
As always, you're asking the seminal questions that need to be asked. Unfortunately, we don't know, at least publicly, the answer to either one of those very important questions, which is why the United States Congress should investigate. And thank you for giving us time, and I'm encouraging folks to call your congressmen, your senators, and demand a real, legitimate investigation of Extortion 17. There's not been one. But back to why was permission denied? We don't know. I believe that we were operating under politically correct rules of engagement that was paying homage to our Islamic, quote-unquote, host on the ground in Afghanistan. We know that Hamid Karzai, who was the U.S. installed president, had been complaining about Special Operations Forces, namely SEALs and Rangers, in killing Taliban. By this time, in 2009, Karzai, and this isn't widely known, was actually negotiating with the Taliban to bring them into his cabinet because we'd announced we were leaving. Very foolishly, we gave him a time to withdraw. And so he's trying to negotiate with the Taliban, and he's complaining about us killing Taliban. So I believe that the rules of engagement were set in deference and in homage to his request. Now, can you imagine how foolish it would have been, Eric, if General Eisenhower had said at D-Day, we're not going to shell the French countryside ahead of putting our troops on the ground. So a long-standing tradition in the American military doctrine that we shell the beachhead, we soften the beachhead. In this case, that was not done. And the thing that makes this even more criminal as far as I'm concerned is because in the 90 days leading up to this shoot down, we had intercepted intelligence that the Taliban was actually moving fighters into this very small Tangi Valley. It's a small, narrow valley solely for the purpose of shooting down an American helicopter.
This sounds like a suicide mission. It almost sounds like a suicide mission for our SEALs.
These were suicidal rules of engagement. It was destined to fail from the beginning. We know on the record, because I've read what has been now declassified as the official investigation.
Yeah, the Colt report.
The skipper of the Colt report of the AC-130 gunship put it on the record. He had not even been requested to do so, but he put it on the record that we requested permission to fire and were denied. His navigator was also interviewed, and his navigator put it on a record, not even in response to a question. They wanted it on the record, and we have off-the-record information that makes it even worse. That gunship apparently was in almost an ongoing argument with ground control. Please let us take this Taliban out. It was denied. And Eric, we had 3 other attacks against helicopters in that area in 90 days prior to this shoot down. It's almost like somebody pulled their hands back and said, let them have at it, SEAL.
And you get into all this in the book. You get into the report. You disassemble that report in the book, Don. And, you know, we've had this rash of so-called green-on-blue violence in Afghanistan with Afghan military members, basically jihadi plants in some cases, killing U.S. soldiers, yet 7 Afghans were on that helicopter, and we still don't know who they are.
One of the shocks that I discovered in reading, this was a 1,200-page report, which mysteriously, Eric, was declassified from top secret to declassified within the period of about 2 weeks because, Eric, somebody in the military wants this information out. But you're right. One of the things that shocked me was to learn that we were flying these missions with Afghan commandos to begin with.
Yeah.
Okay? But we've been doing that because, in theory, they were the host country, and the Afghan government even had veto power over our missions, which is what's crazy about it. But the problem here, there were 7 Afghans who were supposed to be on this chopper, but at the last minute, there was a switch out, unbeknownst even to our government. When this chopper went down, our government began to contact the members of the Afghan military who were on the flight manifest and discovered the 7 who were on the manifest were still alive. There had been a switch out, and we don't know who they were. This was left out of the final report. The whole thing about the rules of engagement and AC-130 was left out. It's a big cover-up, and we need to get to the bottom of it. And with the issue of blue on green, green on blue, we know my SEAL friends have told me and told family members that SEAL members operating that part of the world are more worried about our Afghan quote-unquote allies shooting in the back than they're worried about killing Taliban. We can take care of the Taliban, but it's getting shot in the back by the Afghan. You know, Eric, because you've done more research on this than I have, but we lost a major general, 2-star general, the United States Army, shot in the back by Afghan security force.
That's right.
And this issue of green on blue violence is something that simply is ignored, and it appears those bodies may have been cremated, and they have been cremated. We don't know. But if they have, then we've lost DNA evidence. We cannot identify who these Afghans are.
Speaking of that, the bodies being cremated, Don, we have about a minute left, but the brave U.S. servicemen who were our warriors who were killed in that shoot-down, a Muslim cleric prayed over their bodies after they were killed. And what did he pray, Don? And you talk about this in the book. Again, people will be outraged by this.
He basically, and we discovered this almost a year and a half later, basically when the Sergeant Major in the U.S. Army alerted some family members about it. That was kept quiet as well. He prayed that there would be, that the enemies of Allah, vengeance would be upon the enemies of Allah, that the mountain would burn and consume the enemies of Allah, all done in Arabic, by the way, and basically curse the bodies of our American servicemen. This was discovered almost a year and a half later when a tape was given to some family members who took that tape and sent it to Michelle Bachmann's office, who had it translated into Arabic. There have been translations and cross-checks on those translations. The bodies of our servicemen were cursed there at Bagram Air Force Base before they were brought back to Dover, and it's an abomination.
It's an abomination, and Don, thank God you're shedding a light on it. This is, I have to say, Don, this is one of the most outrageous, infuriating stories I've heard in a long, long time. Folks, the book is called Call Sign Extortion 17, The Shootdown of SEAL Team 6. Don, thank you. And by the way, Don gets into the personal lives. He introduces you to these brave American warriors who were killed that day. Don brings you inside their families, into their personal lives. Folks, these were our best and brightest, and they deserve justice. Don, thanks so much. We appreciate it. God bless you. Keep up the great work.
God bless you, Eric. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Don.